This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. After experiencing trauma, I went to therapy, and my therapist guided me through a difficult time in my life. They helped me understand what was happening and provided me with tools to cope and find my own strength and resilience. Their experience and compassion were invaluable and enabled me to rebuild my life and move forward. I strongly believe in the power of therapy to help people through difficult times. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/resilience. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who has years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/resilience or choose podcast, then Notes on Resilience during sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. Hello, and welcome to Notes on Resilience. I'm your host, Manya Chilinsky, and today I had a fabulous conversation with Terry Fossum. He's a leadership expert, a speaker, an author, and also the world's most interesting man. He really is. We talked about resiliency. We talked about how to get past your fears and your doubts, how to find strength in others when we can't find the strength in ourselves, and the power of mindset. I think you're really going to like this episode. Hey, Terry, I am so excited to be talking to you today.
Well, Manya, I'm so excited to be here. Truly, I appreciate what you're doing to help people through some of the challenges they might have had, and not just overcome them, but soar afterwards. I really appreciate your efforts here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I know we're going to have a great conversation about all sorts of things, resiliency, trauma, etc. Before we dive into that, I want to know if you could have a superpower, what would that be?
I read a book a long time ago, and where people had different magical powers, and it might be whatever power, helping plants grow, whatever it might be. And this one person, they couldn't figure out what her power was. And they finally figured it out that her superpower was to enhance the powers of everybody around her. So if you could grow plants before, you grow them great before. If you could fly, but whatever it might be. And if I was going to have any superpower at all, it would be to enhance the superpowers of those people around me, to help them be even better than they are.
Oh, wow. Terry, that is amazing. I love that one. And I wonder, this might already be a superpower that you have.
Well, you'd have to have everybody else talk to that one. I can't
Yes,
that one.
yes. We will check with other folks on that one. Well, thank you for sharing that. And now I'd love to just get into who are you and what do you do and why or how is it that you and I are here talking today?
I really appreciated, again, what you're doing to help people overcome challenges that they've had. And that's also one of my goals in life, is doing that exact same thing. And my backstory is that I was born in a place called McAllen, Texas. Now, that's my hometown. I love my hometown. Don't get me wrong. I love my hometown. But it can be a little rough growing up there sometimes. You've heard of McAllen, Texas. Everybody listening has heard of McAllen, Texas. If you heard about the 4 tourists that recently got kidnapped in Mexico, that's right across the border near my hometown. McAllen's actually the poorest city in the entire United States of America, the poorest city. And again, I love my hometown. It can be a little rough growing up there sometimes with all the gangs and the drugs. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'll never forget being in my backyard one night, and I was about 14 years old, and I heard a noise in my back alley. Now, if you're from where I'm from, you hear a noise, you check it out, right? Mm-hmm. So I jump over the back fence with all the bluster of a 14-year-old boy. Dun, dun, dun. Now, understand, that's a bad idea. You don't want to be in my back alley at that time of night. Mm-hmm. But it got worse. It got worse when all of a sudden, boom, these headlights hit me. Now, that's bad because headlights, of course, means a car. A car probably means an adult. An adult in my back alley at that time of night, there's a drug deal going on.
Oh, no.
Or a robbery, or something much worse. None of which they want a 14-year-old witness to. Mm-hmm. Now, that's bad, but it got a lot worse. It got a lot worse when the guy walked out in front of those headlights with the assault rifle. and aimed it right at me.
Ugh.
So 14 years old, wondering if my next breath is going to be my last breath. So that's when I was in junior high. When I was in high school, my father was killed. Before he died, one of the neighbors came up to him and said, I just want to make sure you understand something. Your three boys, I had two brothers. He's talking to my dad. Your three boys, I want to make sure you understand something. Not a single one of them will ever grow up to be anything.
Oh, wow, Terry.
So that's my background. In fact, my house was on the front page of the newspaper a while back. My house. I mean, you can't really see it because the crime scene investigation unit parked right in front of it. But you could see the house next door. That was the drug house. And apparently the drug people inside the house, or the drug people outside the house, a lot of money, armed standoff, cordon off my whole neighborhood. So that's my background. Never going to grow up to be anything. Now, what happened with me is I tried not to believe that. And I read all the motivational books you can read and listened to the tapes, right? Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins. I mean, everything, pumped it into my head. And it took me so far, and I got into business. I had a military, I won't say career. I was only in there for about 7 years, but good stint in the military. Then I started in business, and I was terrible at it. I really was. I was absolutely horrible. And I'd try, but I think in the back of my mind, I was never going to grow up to be anything. And I finally got to this one point where I was doing pretty good. I was overcoming my captain's pay. Actually, I was still in at that point. And I got to this point, and as often happens to people like me, I lost 3/4 of my income literally overnight. And I was absolutely heartbroken. I was devastated. And at that point, a low point in my life, I wondered maybe he was right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I never am going to grow up to be anything.
Yeah.
Now, adversity can kill us, or it can inspire us. And adversity, it can keep us down, or it can propel us. We can decide which it's going to be. And it was at that point I said, wait a minute. No, I refuse. I refuse to let him be right. And an amazing thing happened, Manya. That propelled me more than anything else did.
Wow.
Well, see, I realized in business, we do all these visualizations, these positive visualizations. And that's great. They're critical. They really are. And dream boards, which is where we put, pictures of big houses and big cars and everything up, right? You've heard
yes,
them?
I have one. Yes.
Yeah, okay, there you go. And those are important. They're critical. But for me, they weren't enough, because for me, I'm an outdoorsman. I'm my happiest in a tent in the middle of nowhere. And still, even in the back of my mind was all the yeah buts. We'll talk about it in a little bit. Yeah, in my case for this right now, yeah, but I'm never going to grow up to be anything. But it was at that point when I let that propel me, I realized something. The fear of loss is a greater motivator than the prospect of gain. Let me say it again. The fear of loss is a greater motivator than the prospect of gain. And suddenly I started taking more action than before, because quite frankly, it pissed me off, right?
Yes.
You bet it did. Absolutely. And that can be a good thing if it's channeled correctly, if it's funneled correctly. So from then on, when I'd start getting afraid of making those phone calls, but that ain't going to hold me back. He's not going to be right. I refuse to let him be right. So I'd make the phone calls. When I get my 25th no, I don't care, because he's not going to be right. And I ended up succeeding.
Wow.
And what I didn't realize is there's something called prospect theory. Now, prospect theory won the Nobel Prize when it was applied to economics. Prospect theory shows that framing can be very, very positive, both positive and negative framing. And that's what I was doing. I ended up putting this in what I call the ox cart technique, which is, it's basically a simple concept like the carrot and the stick.
Okay.
And I won't tell the entire story is in my book, The Ox Cart Technique. But the bottom line is sometimes the carrot will propel you. If you're hungry, sometimes the carrot will motivate you. Sometimes it won't. And that's when you need the stick. And it's properly utilizing both of those that has made me very blessed in many arenas.
Wow.
You mentioned in the intro, very successful in the military, in business, in acting, martial arts, and. Why is that? Well, there's a lot of reasons. But one of them is I used this technique, the ox cart technique, and it worked. And thank God it did, because now I'm able to help people all around the globe, which is something that this boy who's never going to grow up to be anything would have never even imagined, even on a reality show, for goodness sake, while representing all Boy Scouts of America in my Scoutmaster uniform.
Wow.
Isn't that funny?
That man could not have been more wrong and somehow managed to motivate you in a way he was not expecting.
Yeah, yeah. And what's really fun about that, we know who he is. He still lives in McAllen, Texas, and that's okay. But he's had to hear the stories about me and my other brother. And I have two brothers. One of them is a very successful dentist
Mm-hmm.
and philanthropist. He gives back a lot to important causes. I'm so proud of him. He's a great man. And the other one is a U.S. astronaut.
Yeah, I guess that's reasonably successful, I suppose.
What's funny about that is, again, all three of us never going to grow up to be anything. Now, my brother Mike has a school named after him in our hometown of McAllen.
That's such a lovely story about overcoming such difficulty, Terry. And I'm so sad that those were the low expectations of you and your brothers at the time. And it's just so amazing how you've overcome that. So thank you for sharing that story.
We all have those people in our life, though, don't we?
Yeah,
And
we do.
especially online these days. Oh my gosh, people are so ready to trash other people.
I know.
It's true, right?
Yeah.
And we have to choose. And a lot of times, though, that person, the worst, can be ourselves.
Yes.
And that's where we have to make a choice on other people, who to believe, and then take a look at the yeah buts. And we can talk about that in a second. You might have some questions for me.
Oh, I have lots of questions for you, Terry. Since the name of the podcast is Notes on Resilience, I would love to know, what do you think about the word resilience?
Yeah, great question, of course. I think it's tenacity, grit, a word that's been used in the older days, grit, but
Mhm.
tenacity, the ability to move forward, to see the light in the darkness, to find your strength in the weakness.
Yeah. I mean, and your story is a great example of resilience. And I know it wasn't a straight line between your 14-year-old self and where you are today. I know there were lots of zigzags, but it is sort of the classic story of being directly told you're not going to be worth anything and then being where you are now with a #1 best-selling book.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Who'd have thunk?
Yeah, I know, right? Who'd have thunk it? I have a love-hate / don't totally hate relationship with the word resilience.
Okay.
When I first heard it in terms of a psychological trait or something that, we as humans can use to bounce back, I didn't believe it applied to me. And the more I've been paying attention to it, the more I feel like there's personal resilience, but then there is the role that our communities and our organizations have in supporting our resiliency. I can be as resilient as I want, but if you keep breaking my arm, it doesn't matter how much I individually am able to heal if every time I heal, you break my arm again. So I'm just wondering, what do you think of the role of our systems or our institutions in helping people be resilient and maybe recovering from a trauma?
I love one of the things on your website, actually. What if I'm not Boston Strong?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was just fantastic, just profound. Not everyone is.
Mm-hmm.
So when we don't have the strength in ourselves, we need to get it from others. We need to get it from outside sources. And maybe that goes back to your initial question to me. If we see that people don't have strength in themselves, we lend them some of our strength. Because a lot of times, if somebody is feeling down, if they're not feeling resilient, they're not getting over it, they're having their challenges, they just need somebody to help them through it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the strongest words I think I've ever heard are, "I believe in you." And it's amazing. And I've learned that just through my own past speaking and working with people. I can say that to a crowd of 6,000 people. "I believe in you." I don't know these people. I've never met these people. They don't know me. And yet, because they heard those words from somebody else, and it's not just me, from anybody else, suddenly, wow, somebody believes in me. And you know what? You know this. Sometimes that's all they need, is to hear that somebody believes in them, for God's sake.
Agreed. And I know you have felt it. I have felt it. I know our listeners have felt it. That feeling when somebody says those words or they respond to you in a way that that's what they're saying. Or
Yeah.
for me, I hear you, I see you, I hear your story. there have been times that just those words felt like they lifted this weight off of me.
Yeah. Yeah. And people will break down crying when they hear somebody's actually hearing me. So
Yes.
not just they heard the noise. No, they heard me.
Yes.
It can be profound.
And I think we all know the difference when someone says it and really means it.
Yeah.
Because there's just that way that we can feel finally validated.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Absolutely.
Terry, what do you think people misunderstand about the concept of resilience?
I come from obviously a bit of a tough background, and my parents were amazing people. I don't want anybody to get me wrong on this either. My parents were amazing people, but we come from a background of, just tough it out, brush yourself off, move forward. And of course, I very much do with my military background and my outdoors background and all that. Good, you're bleeding. Fantastic.
Oh, no.
Sometimes people can do that, and that's what they need. It's just a kick in the butt. But you know what? Sometimes they can't. Maybe at that point in their life, they don't have the strength in them. Not that they don't overall, just at that point, man, maybe they're tired. Maybe they're worn down. Maybe they're just hitting one of those emotional lows that we all hit.
Yes.
Me included. Let's not try to fool anybody here, okay? We're all human beings. And to be able to help them get past that emotional low just by, again, just giving them some of your strength, but understanding it's not weakness in them. Mm-hmm. They're not a weak person. We all have those lows, whether you want to admit it or not, to yourself even. You have those lows. So it's, again, just understanding at that moment in time, they need some help. They just need an encouraging word, something like that. Maybe they need to see a solution they just can't see right now. And the light opens up and, they're ready to roll again.
Yeah. And as you know, from your own experience and from working with real humans with messy lives, we often don't know what we're missing when we're in the midst of a trauma or a difficult life experience. We may not know what we're supposed to do or what would be helpful to do for ourselves to heal. So having support, whether it's friends or family or coworkers or a random stranger on the street, can be so helpful in those times when we can't see ourselves what's happening.
That's a great point. A random stranger, somebody on the street, we don't know what's going on in their lives. And that's why when somebody is rude to me or short with me or whatever, that's what I tell myself. It's no reflection on me. Mm-hmm. It's a reflection of what's going on in their lives. It's not a reflection on necessarily if they're a good or bad person, but it's a reflection of what's going on in their lives right now. So, give people grace. First of all, give them grace, but then also give them love. Let's go past just giving them grace and, letting it go. Now let's give them a little extra love. You got somebody like that, give them a little extra love. You've got the strength right then. Give a little of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the thought of that. Well, you think a lot about like how to get past fears and self-doubts and things that are holding you back. Can you give us some examples or tell us where we can find more information about that?
Absolutely. Honestly, it's one of my favorite things and many reasons why, but there's so much, like we talked about, motivational stuff out there, how to soar, how to be great, how to this, that, and the other. But there's the yeah, but that I mentioned earlier, because we can hear all that great stuff. But if we've got the yeah, buts going on in our mind, we're never going to get there. So we could hear something about you can be anything you want to be. Yeah, but maybe I'm not good enough. Yeah, but I've got a fear of change. Yeah, but I tried that before and it didn't work. Yeah, but I don't have time. Yeah, but et cetera. We've got all these yeah, buts going on that'll hold us back. I realized at one point too, they were holding me back. And my brother, now you know what he does for a living, the astronaut, told me something about the space shuttle that blew my mind, Manya. And I've never forgotten it. When I learned this little fact, I had a whole different outlook on things. Here's what, would you like to hear it?
I would love to hear it. And our listeners would love to hear it. What is it?
Okay, you got it. Now, you've seen a rocket launch, be it in the movies, on TV, maybe in person, right? You've seen a rocket launch before, right?
Yes.
And you see the countdown. The countdown goes, 10, 9, 8. And during that, you start seeing all this smoke and all this steam, right?
Yes.
Get this, at T-4, all in the space shuttle, all three main engines of the space shuttle were firing at full force. Now, this is an amazing amount of force, enough to propel it into space going 15,500 miles per hour, full force, T-4 seconds. And yet the space shuttle's not going anywhere. It's
Yes.
still sitting on the launch pad, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can that happen? If they're full force, as strong as they're ever going to get, how could? Because there's 8 relatively tiny bolts holding it back. 8 relatively tiny bolts. In fact, now I know the viewers can't see the video. You can look back here and see part of one of those bolts.
Wow.
That's it right there. 8 tiny bolts holding back all this power, all this potential, holding it back from God and man meant it to do, to truly soar into the heavens. 8 bolts. Now, an amazing thing happens. So that's at T-4, 3, 2, 1. At T-0, there's little explosive charges that go off in those bolts that blow those bolts in half, as you can see right there. There
Yeah,
you go.
you only have half of one.
Only have half of one back there. Yeah, it got blown in half. So it couldn't hold back that space shuttle anymore. So at T-0, bam, it takes off, it goes and does what God and man intended it to do.
Wow.
When I realized that, like, wait a minute, no matter how much we have propelling us forward, no matter how much potential we have, how much enthusiasm, how much passion, how much anything, if we're being held back by those bolts, we're not going to get there. So it became my job to figure out what are those 8 bolts that hold most people back.
Wow.
I talked to successful people out there. What were they for them? How'd they get past them? I talked to non-successful people. What's holding you back?
Mm-hmm.
And I narrowed it down to those 8 bolts and came up with, okay, here's what you can do about them from a guy that's overcome most of them and from a lot of other people that have too. And the 8 bolts, I'll go ahead and tell you for your listeners here. Bolt number 1, fear. So fear of the unknown, fear of change, fear of what your friends might say, fear of committing, Bolt number 1 is fear. Bolt number 2 is those self-doubts that most all of us have. Mm-hmm. I'm not good enough. Maybe I don't have what it takes. Something in my past makes me believe I can't do it. It's called imposter syndrome.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. We know it, People hear you on the podcast, me on these things, all that. Wow, what? We must think we're great. No, we don't. I still have. Why would anybody listen to me? Because I grew up with me. I know who I am.
Right.
Yeah. So how do you get past that? The other one is failure itself. And I know we talked about fear of failure, but there's some different aspects of failure that I needed to hit head on. I've tried it before and it didn't work. I failed at other things. I just can't take the disappointment of failing again. Mm-hmm. That's bolt number 3. 4, bad attitude. A lot of people talk about how to make a great attitude. First, you got to get past having a bad attitude. Mm-hmm. You got to blow that bolt.
Yeah.
And I'll go more quickly now. Taking that first step. Procrastination is a big one. Mm-hmm. Just taking that first step. The excuses in your life. I don't have time right now. Yes, you do.
Yes.
Yeah. And lack of motivation. Actually, there's a couple more. We'll go into it at a different time. But if anybody does, I recorded this into an audio series that, quite honestly, I am so proud of. And the feedback from it has been amazing. And what I'm going to do, I did a very limited release when it came out to, okay, let's get some feedback. I was hoping for some negative feedback, quite honestly, so I could make it even better. But I got this life-changing. This truly changed the way I look at it. Just amazing. And then it's not available right now.
Okay.
Except, and we didn't talk about this ahead of time, so a little surprise for you too.
Okay.
For your listeners of this podcast, for 1 week after the airing of this podcast, I'm going to make it available to your listeners only.
Okay.
And I'm going to do it at a very discounted price. The price of this thing is going to be $395. It's over 4 hours of material, life-changing material from me. And I'll admit I get paid more than that up on stage. But for your listeners of this podcast, because I really believe what you're doing, $98.
Wow, Terry, that's amazing. Thank you.
You bet. Well, again, I really appreciate what you're doing. It'll be for 1 week only. I'm going to shut it down again because I don't want everybody to be able to go in there and get it. Yes. And quite frankly, if you don't do it within a week, you're not going to do it. Honestly, yes. If you don't do it within 24 hours, if you don't do it within 2 hours, you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. So if you're listening to this podcast a week after it's aired, sorry, but it'll be up again.
Yeah.
To get it, you can go to ultimatedrivingforce.com, www.ultimatedrivingforce.com.
Okay. And is there a code for listeners to use for that week?
Yes. Yes. Thank you for reminding me of that. The code is going to be, I'm writing it down, so I put it in there. I think resilient is a little hard to remember how it's spelled sometimes. Manya, they may or may not. What do you think it should be? You're about to name the code.
Oh my goodness. How about just notes?
Notes. There you go. NOTES. All lowercase. Notes will be the code for the discount.
Excellent. Oh, Terry, thank you so much. That's so generous. And I know some of our listeners are going to want to take you up on that. I was excited about the concept of how you came about even calling it blow the bolts. And when you were telling that story of the space shuttle, the other thing that really struck me is that it's at full power before it's time to take off.
Yeah.
So you don't wait until zero and then put your foot on the gas. You're sort of already going. And I don't know, I just love that concept.
Well said. Yeah.
So, we're getting close to the end of this conversation. There's so many different avenues you and I could have gone down. I love the one we've gone down. We may have to have another conversation later, but for now, I'd love to know, is there an important lesson about resiliency or compassion or strength that you've learned because of your work or who you are, not just your work?
I think a fun story to add in here might be, have you ever seen those guys that go out in the middle of the wilderness all by themselves, these harsh climates and everything, and exist out there, survive out there, whatever?
Yes.
I'm one of those weirdos.
Oh gosh, Terry.
And I was out in Death Valley and all by myself. I know it's not safe. It's what I do.
It's right there in the name, Terry. Death Valley.
Catch a clue, buddy. Well, and it almost, I almost added to its name. I'm out there. I'm by myself. Actually, nobody knows where I'm at. I'm way out in the backcountry, not where even the tourists go. I'm way past that. And have a heavy backpack on, probably about a 70-pound pack, because I need a lot of water because it's Death Valley.
Yes.
And I'm climbing up this cliff, and the soil is so weird there because it's so hot and so dry. It's the strangest soil I've ever seen. It just crumbles. Mm-hmm. And I'm climbing up this cliff with this backpack on. Now, it wasn't a straight up cliff, but it was a very, very steep incline. And all of a sudden, my foothold gives out. So I lunge for a handhold. Mm-hmm. Now, it's because of that crumbly soil, it's starting to give out too. It's degrading as well. Now, I'm looking down this cliff, and things just got really, really bad, right? Nobody knows where I'm at. I'm all by myself. If I even break a leg out there, I'm dead.
Yeah.
Now, I'm looking down the cliff, and it's a long ways down, and I realize I'm not going to make it. Mm-hmm. With this backpack on, this heavy 70-pound pack, I'm not going to make it. But it's got things that I need. It's got my water. It's got my shelter. It's got my emergency locator beacon. See, I do one thing safe. Yes. It's got everything in it. I can't let go, but I have to. So I try to figure out, okay, can I actually do that? This thing's strapped on. Yeah. So I'm trying to hold on with one hand while unstrapping this thing. Now I got to get her over that other arm. I'm doing all of this. I finally am able to release this backpack with a lot of effort, and I watch it go down the cliff below me and then out of sight.
Oh, man.
Oh, man is not the word I use, but, it was something like that. Now, because of that, though, I was able to climb to safety.
Yeah.
And, well, I'm on the podcast today, so kind of made it. But here's the important lesson from that. We all have baggage holding us back. Mm-hmm. We all have things that we don't want to let go of. We don't think we can let go of, but we have to. Because if we don't let go of that baggage, it's going to take us down with it. I knew that backpack was going down that cliff. The only question is, was I going to be in it or not? Now, listen, sometimes that baggage is people that don't believe in us, people that believe we're never going to grow up to be anything, people that find the worst in us instead of the best. Sometimes it's those things that have happened in our past that we have to let go. And when you finally do, it can be so freeing. It can be so freeing. And then you can climb your way. It's still a climb to the rest of your amazing life.
Wow. Just thank you for sharing that story. The moment when you said, I knew the backpack was going to drop down whether I was strapped in it or not. What were you feeling at that moment?
Fear. Quite honestly, oh crap, I might have finally done it.
Oh,
I've had, quite a few, obviously, life or deaths out there. That's just part of it.
yeah.
But no, it was more like, okay, it was a little bit of fear to begin with. Okay, this just got really bad, but what can I do about it? I didn't focus on the fear. I didn't
Mhm.
focus on I'm about to die. It was okay. I understand the problem, and this is a big one for a lot of people. I understand the problem. What's the solution?
Mhm.
And that's why I tell people a lot of times when they keep coming at me with the problem. I got the problem. Understand it. Roger Wilco. What's the solution? That's what you always have to focus on. Focus on the problem. It'll keep tearing you down. It'll keep dragging you down.
Right.
Always focus on the solution.
Right. Well, I have a question for you.
Sure.
When someone is stuck in that, this is the problem, you're kind of, whether it's become a mantra or you're just somehow stuck, how do you get yourself to think about the solution? Or what if you have no idea what the solution is?
Reach out, get help. And this is so critical for a lot of people that will be listening to this podcast. We can't do it on our own. All right.
Yeah.
We can't do it on our own. Rely on other people, seek help, accept help.
Mm-hmm.
People can come up with solutions that you can't see or you don't want to see, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah, get help, whether it's a bud or professional help or whatever it is. But yeah, if you don't have the answers, somebody else does. There's always a way. There's always a way. It merely becomes our job to find that way.
Yes.
So once you've internalized, okay, there is a solution. I know it exists out there. I don't know what it is yet, but I know there's a solution. Okay. Now that I've gone past, there's no solution. Yeah, there is. There's always a way.
Yeah.
Now it just becomes our job. Okay, what is that way? And that's a mind shift that's really powerful.
Yes. That is a powerful mind shift. Even just accepting, I know there's a way.
Yeah.
There is a way. I don't know what it is, but there is a way. And now my job is to find that way.
Yeah.
I like that mind shift. Wow, Terry. So our time is coming to an end. And what is one question that you wish I had asked you? And how would you have answered it?
That's a great one. No, I mean you're fantastic. You're fantastic. You're doing an amazing job here. I think that's probably enough for everybody to soak in for right now. But yeah, I'd be happy to be a guest on your show again. And also reach out to me, everyone, on my social media. I'm about to be launching a whole lot of content.
Ooh, nice.
That I'm really, really excited about, including a couple of coaching programs on public speaking, for one thing.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, there's so many people have this fear of public speaking. And I've got a trick that I use every time that I've used to help some of the most of, to help everybody be the most powerful they ever have been in their lives.
Wow.
Before they get up on stage, before they make a sales call, before they talk to anybody else, before they greet their day. I teach people how to get into the mindset, the mind state of being the most powerful they have ever been in their lives. And I'll be launching that coaching program within the next couple of months. Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. Plus the ox cart technique at some point, helping people to have, of course, better businesses, better, how to make money, how to save money, but more important, better relationships.
Yes.
This ox cart technique has helped people get off of addictions.
Wow.
It's been so rewarding, so amazing.
Great.
So that's it. Yeah, follow me, join me, go over to my website, terrylfossum.com, and let's have some fun and reach out if there's anything else. And Manya, for you too, that you think I can help people with, because I'm always looking for input. How can I serve people better? And I'd love to hear it.
Thank you for sharing. And we will have links to all of those in the show notes so you can get to them. And last question, what would you tell your 18-year-old self about resiliency?
I love it. I think for one thing, I'd tell my 18-year-old self that you're better than you think you are. You're more. Let me say that. You're more than you think you are. Mm-hmm. And if anybody listening questions that of themselves, which many probably are, ask the people around you. Ask the people around you. Now, it's hard to do, brag about me. I get it. But I'm doing some research on something, whatever it is. Always be honest, though, 100% always honest. What do you think is a good quality that I have? Mm-hmm. And let them answer, because we are all more than we believe we are. We're more capable, certainly of accomplishing things, but we're also, I think, more loving, more supportive. we make a bigger impact on the world around us than we think we do.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I tell my 18-year-old self. And that would have given me, I think, even more power to go out and, God willing, do more, help more people.
I love it. Thank you. Terry, thank you for this conversation. Absolutely fabulous. And we will definitely plan to have you back in the future on another episode, because I've loved this conversation and I want to dig into more of the stories we didn't get to share today. So thank you to you, and thank you to our listeners for joining us today.
Yeah, hey guys, you're here, you're listening for a purpose, and I appreciate that. That means you're taking steps to get through, get over whatever that you're trying to get over. Keep doing it. Keep listening to this podcast. Whatever you need to do, reach out to friends, reach out to family. You got this. There's light at the end of the tunnel. You can accomplish amazing, amazing things. I know that. I have. And I know we talked about it before, but it's absolutely true. I believe in you. Go get them.
Thank you for listening. I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I did. So if you'd like to learn more about me, Manya Chilinsky, I work with organizations to help understand how to create environments where people can thrive after difficult life experiences. And I do this through talks and consulting. I'm a survivor of mass violence, and I use my experience to help leaders learn about resiliency, compassion, and trauma-sensitive leadership, to build strategies to enable teams to thrive and be engaged amidst difficulty and turmoil. If this is something you want to learn more about, visit my website, www.manyachilinsky.com, or email me at manya@manyachilinsky, or stop by my social media on LinkedIn and Twitter. Thanks so much.